beautiful bastards. Welcome back, you beautiful bastards, to another episode. This week we have a great guest. His name is George Siegel. And Jerry, why don't you tell us about George?
So George Siegel, actually, I didn't find out until we did this episode. Used to be a weatherman, which is pretty cool. It explains his silky, amazing radio voice. But what he does is he is a filmmaker and a director and producer. So I don't know if he filmmakes full time, but he made what I would classify an important film called The Last House Standing. And so through that adventure, he has gotten a lot of information and made a lot of contacts in the realm of building houses safer for what is now increasing natural disasters. And whether you believe in global warming or not is not really relevant here, because I don't think anyone can deny that weather has gotten more extreme in the last 10 years.
Dude, just this year, just this summer.
It's crazy.
You believe it or not, this summer's ridiculous. It's getting crazy.
Every rainstorm at my house for the last 2 months has been heavy downpours, like Texas rain.
And it's now July 7th. How many heat waves have we had? Like 4?
Oh,
We're
yeah.
in New England. That's not normal.
It's crazy. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider, and he's got a lot of solid information, stuff that I never even considered. So, why don't you guys check it out?
How's it going today, George?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thanks for being on. We appreciate it. Now, I haven't had a chance yet to see The Last House Standing, although it is something that I have a lot of interest in. I just haven't had a chance to check it out, with all the other things in life going on, with COVID kind of coming into an end, kind of continuing,
Sure. Where are you guys located in the country? What part of the country are you in?
We were in New England.
Yep, I'm in Connecticut, and he's in Rhode Island.
The title of our film is probably very appropriate for you guys if you've been following Hurricane Elsa.
Yeah, we have.
I was going to say.
It kind of was not that big a deal here, although it was forecast that it could have been a lot worse, but it's coming up the East Coast. So, it highlights what we talk about in our film about being prepared for storms, because you guys might be sitting around having a great summer and somebody else's hurricane lands in your yard. And that's something that's coming your way.
Yeah, that tends to happen to us, especially in Connecticut, every year. We get the hurricanes from Florida.
Yeah, it almost turns into like a nor'easter. Where, the storms that come up the coast and you think you're not going to have it that bad, but then it's a little further inland and it pulls in more moisture. And the bottom line is, are you ready? And it's interesting with the storm that just moved through here. It created a situation where I'm writing a blog right now about it. If you just miss a disaster or one blows by you and you don't get really affected by it, does it make you more likely to ignore the next one? Or does it make you go, okay, now I better prepare for the next one? And that's an interesting question for your listeners, because I think human nature, most people go, phew, I'm good. Don't have to worry about this stuff.
I've been
depends on the person.
I've been guilty of that.
Some people are preppers.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, you can apply it to a lot of things. You have a few extra beers when you're out one night and you make it home, but the cop drives by you and you get that scared feeling like you could have got in trouble, and then you forget about it until the next time you're out. Or if you are almost in a car accident, or if you almost trip on a hill. I mean, there's so many things that you just put out of your mind. But when it comes to natural disasters, and are you ready for them? Is your house safe? Do you have the proper preparation materials for it? We tend to just blow that off and go, nah, it's not going to happen. The odds are it's a 1 in 100, and then we just move on.
Yeah, I've done the same thing at my house. Yeah, but so we have, like I was saying, we get kind of the remnants of hurricanes every year. And every year it's not that bad here. On occasion, it'll get pretty bad. We'll be without power for a couple weeks. And then every time it happens, I say, I should probably go get a generator and some other stuff. And then, as time goes by, I tell myself, it wasn't that bad. I guess I could live without it. So I'm, permanently unprepared for this weather.
Yeah, and what I was learning as I was researching for this blog is that the thing that makes people tend to fix things or change things, the one thing that probably is the biggest factor, is once you've been wiped out by the disaster. So your house gets destroyed, maybe you don't rebuild it the exact same way, or you decide, okay, maybe living right here by the ocean is not a good idea, or living by this river. You mean they flood? I didn't know that. So it's a wake up call, but unfortunately, it takes tragedy sometimes to be the ultimate wake up call. But it really doesn't have to be that way. If we became proactive instead of reactive, which is what we talk about in The Last House Standing, is look at your vulnerabilities and try to fix them,
Right.
then you could save billions of dollars. And it's not a fun thing to do. No one wants to sit around on a Saturday inventorying their stuff, or going out and buying a generator or doing any of those things, but it can make a major difference. And it's something that it's your choice. The choice is yours, how much you want to prepare.
Now, humans, from my perspective, seem to be pretty repetitive, especially when we're talking about Florida, because they have a hurricane going on right now. They get demolished by a hurricane every year, and they keep building their beach houses back where they used to be. What's going on with that? What is driving that decision?
Well, first of all, you hope they build them better after they've done it. The building codes have gotten a little tougher down here. I'm actually in Florida, and I'm in an area in Tampa where we're a bullseye waiting to happen for a major hurricane, because the bay is shallow. So a storm surge would bring in an incredible amount of water. There's an estimate that 500,000 homes would be destroyed if we had a bullseye from a major hurricane.
Right.
Yet most people aren't really that prepared for it. There's groups here that are working on better preparations, but the building code is not as tough as South Florida. I think the wind code here for building might be 140 miles an hour. I'm not positive. In South Florida, it's 175. So they're thinking differently down there than they are here. And in terms of water, there's a lot of houses in an area where there can be a 10-foot storm surge where I live. There's a lot of houses that are at sea level, that are at zero. And the reason for that is they're older homes. People just are, buying time every year, wondering if it's going to happen, or maybe they're not worried about it at all. And so when the house does get destroyed, hopefully you build it back smarter. You elevate it. You put in, I would do concrete block. If you're living right on the beach, the house we feature in The Last House Standing, the guy put beams into the sand that went 35, 40 feet down into the sand. And his house survived. Everything around it was washed away. So you can make as intense a fortress as you want. It's a matter of how much you want to spend on it. But you also need to calculate. You can't just say, okay, is it $100,000 versus 120? You can't really put a price on, well, what if I lose everything? What if I have to go live in a hotel for a year? What if I have nothing after this disaster? What if I wasn't properly insured? And what if I lost my job because of it? There's so many factors that happen after a disaster that most people don't calculate. They're just looking at dollar for dollar. Well, to build it this way or build it that way.
Right.
And in our film, you'll meet people who literally lost everything in disasters. And you have to think, was it worth it? Was it worth what you're going through for the next year, 5 years, 7 years? People don't know. And that's the thing that people need to think about. Is it worth it?
I mean, if you're talking to those people, I'm going to guarantee they're going to say no. But how do you get everyone else on the flip side of it to be proactive and, to make those upgrades?
Well, the best thing would be if we could change the building codes, but that's not going to happen because that becomes political.
Yeah.
The builders as an industry lobby to keep standards lower, because if you're building something and automatically it's going to cost you more and people aren't going to buy it, you could get stuck with it. So they lobby to keep standards low. You'll have two sides of the aisle arguing over things like building codes. So what I advocate in the film is that for it to start at the homeowner level, for us to demand more. If you're going in and looking at a house and you like the neighborhood, but that house is a piece of garbage, don't buy it. Don't reward somebody else's bad work and now make it your problem, because they're moving on and you're stuck with that house that's at flood level. You're stuck with that house that is all wood in a time when you should be building with concrete, that has a shingle roof that isn't strapped on to the walls of the house. Don't do it. Don't get pulled into it. Demand more. Insist that your house is safe, because that's something we can all do right now. We don't have to wait for it. And then hopefully the building code catches up, and it doesn't take a major disaster to do it. But if you do nothing and you wait for them, it'll never happen.
Now, when you were speaking to victims in your film, people that they survived these disasters and their house was gone, did you find that it changed their perspective and they decided they wanted to spend the extra money and make those those demands for better quality?
That certainly was something they have to think about, especially if you have a house that burns down,
Right.
or blows away. That's a major factor in your decision. What they're contemplating, at the time we interviewed them, they were still going through the grief of losing everything, and it's not a slam dunk that you can just rebuild your house right away. You have to wait for the insurance company to settle and give you the money. In a place like Malibu, California, where we talk to victims of the fire, the building codes have changed. A lot of those houses were 20, 30, 40 years old. And so by the time you go to rebuild it, there's a whole different standard of what you have to do. So they will only let you come back and rebuild if you match the footprint of the house that was there, which is stupid because that probably was part of the problem of why it burned.
Yeah.
But I think they're all considering, what can we do to avoid being a victim? But it's not an automatic process. You don't just lose everything, run down, get a check, rebuild. A few months later, you're back in your house. I mean, it can take years for that. The mayor of Malibu at the time when we did the film, he had a very expensive house, but he had paid it off over the years. So he didn't have a mortgage company on his side or a bank. And so when he went to collect the money from the insurance, they said, no, we're not going to pay you. What? You're not going to pay me? I pay you insurance every month.
Right.
And so he had to get a court date, which they made 2 years down the road. And 2 years down the road, he'll walk into court and the insurance company is going to pay him because they have to pay him. But they didn't have anybody to fight about paying him. If you have a mortgage with Bank of America and the house burns down, the insurance company's not going to get in a fight with Bank of America. They're going to pay it.
Yeah.
But if it's just Joe Smith, the little guy down the street, they'll take advantage of you all the time. Insurance companies love collecting money, but they don't like giving it back. And that's all we really care about. If I have a disaster, are you giving me something? Are you going to take care of me? And the answer is not always. No, they're not going to.
Well, that was my question on the other side. You were saying that the builders were lobbying for keeping the prices down. You'd think that insurance companies, if anything, would be lobbying for the construction or the building code to come up to a point where these houses weren't getting decimated, because it doesn't help them out when they have to shell out money in the end.
That's a great mystery, why they don't advocate more proactive stuff. I don't understand that myself. I approached several insurance companies to try to get them to be part of the film, as underwriters, because it's their message. Wow, if we all build better, we could save millions and millions of dollars. Not one of them even remotely consider it. I just got blow-off letters back from them. Like, thanks for coming out, pal. No.
Yeah.
And,
if even that, right?
Yeah. If even that. Some of them never even got back to me. I won't name them, but that.
I'm sure all the big names are there.
Yeah,
I know in like the car industry, they lobby to change safety systems on a car so they have less insurance claims. You know what I mean? So why wouldn't they be doing the same in the house? Or is whoever's running the house insurance game just lazy and doesn't care?
Wow, that's a great question that I don't have the answer to. I know with cars, it was mandated that you had to have airbags in cars. Yep. That probably didn't come from the car manufacturer level. They just knew they had to do it. When we interviewed FEMA, the FEMA director in the film, one of the things that FEMA is really pushing for, and the reason they talked to us, is they want a more proactive approach to disasters. Because what happens every time there's a disaster, they get called in, everybody gets mad at them because they're not instantly solving the problem. It's not their job to come in and make everybody whole. They're just there to help get started again.
Right.
They're trying to stop the bleeding.
Yeah. So they want proactive. They want people to think in advance. That's a great question about the insurance company. You guys should have an insurance company on if they'll even come on your show.
I don't think they'll talk to us.
I want to listen because you think they would care more. I've had a lot of ideas that people have told me were stupid ideas. This film is not one of them, and I'm surprised they didn't get on board. It's always the most obvious people that you think would be part of your project because they have the most to gain from it.
Yeah,
I think it must come to the fact that they're not trying to sit on that cutting edge, because I know for a fact, I think it was 2011, the insurance companies lobbied to have headrests changed in cars. If you've noticed, any car after 2011, the headrests are annoying and they're very uncomfortable. And that's because it tilts your head forward more, so there are less whiplash cases. So obviously, whoever's on the car side of the house is on top of things. Houses, I think it's more of a just let it go.
Well, they're still making money. I've been told, and I don't have the
Oh yeah.
statistics. I just was told by a guy in our film that in some of the worst years of disasters, the insurance companies have still made money. You know, the
Mhm.
big companies aren't going out of business. Maybe they just tweak your rates up. They, I don't know what they do to get by, but in terms of getting the message out to be proactive, yeah, sometimes I got an email from one company that talked about, hey, the storm's coming, let's be prepared. First of all, if that's when you're telling me to get prepared, it's too late. You
Yeah.
know, you need to tell me 6 months early or maybe a year. Maybe when I'm signing up with you, hey, do you have hurricane windows? Are all these things safe on your house? Because you can't fix it at the last minute. That's a joke when they have Hurricane Awareness Week right before hurricane season.
Right.
That's a great time to tell you to get batteries and make sure you have water in your house. Everybody's not going to be thirsty when the storm moves through. But the major stuff that could save your life, it's too late at that point.
Yeah, take right now. We have well, by the time it hits us, it won't be a hurricane, but there's a hurricane rolling up the East Coast, and it's supposed to hit us, Friday?
Yeah, I
And
think Friday.
I guarantee people are probably going out now to try to buy supplies or do whatever they can when it should have. I mean, this is early for us. I don't know about you, Jerry. Normally we don't have hurricanes this time of year. Right now it's July.
Yeah.
Hurricane
guys
season
down there
started
might
the
be.
beginning of June, but it's early to have one like this one. They say it's one of
Right.
the earliest ones that they've seen, and for it to come up to you guys, it's pretty early in the season.
I would say normally it's October when we start seeing these things come up our end.
Yeah, I think because it came as such a surprise, I've been talking to quite a surprising number of people who didn't even realize that there was a hurricane on the way up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're not paying attention to the news, I always get a kick out of because I watch the news all the time and I'm always watching the Weather Channel. I used to be a
Right.
weatherman. I'm fascinated by news coverage and what they're going to do with a situation like that. So I know what's going on. But then you look on Facebook where somebody's going to a beach resort and they go, does anybody know what the weather's going to be? I mean, come on, there's a million ways you can find that out. Is
Yeah.
Facebook really where you're getting from another person, you're getting your
Yeah.
weather? It's just everybody should have some weather source that they are in touch with. You can have an app on your phone from the Weather Channel. You can have any of your local stations. They all have websites and they all have, you can get the weather sent to your phone. There's no excuse in this day of an age. I hope I'm not scolding you guys if you're totally unprepared. I'm not trying to be
No.
the old preaching parent. But there's no excuse for not knowing because there's so many ways to get information now. How could you not know?
I totally agree with that. But, you had mentioned that most people don't bother getting prepared until days in advance of whatever extreme weather is on their way. I'm actually not really familiar with what you're referring to when you say like life-saving preparation, like hurricane windows. That's the first time I'd ever heard
You might
that
not
term.
need those where you live.
What kind of
Okay, so
right? I might not need them up here, but what kind of things are we talking about for people that they can start doing in advance?
well, the
Months
number
and
one
years
thing,
before
and
the
thing
next
that should be
hurricane.
the easiest for you to do is go look at your insurance policy and make sure you have insurance and make sure you have flood insurance. If you don't live in a flood zone, flood insurance is not expensive. Your regular insurance policy is not going to include flood insurance, so you have to pay extra for that. But if you live anywhere near a water source, the FEMA director said if it rains where you live, your house can flood. And they recommend everybody have flood insurance. And then you want to make sure what your coverage is for your stuff. A named storm can change what your coverage is. So you also need to take pictures of everything in your house. Everybody has a cell phone or a camera. Go take pictures of everything. If a disaster hit you, the insurance company is not going to take your word for it that you had the 65-inch Sony big screen TV. You're going to have to prove it. So you need to have proof on your end of everything you have that you would claim. And that might take you 10 minutes to walk through your house, take pictures, store them on the cloud so it's not on your phone, which you could have damaged and lose. And beyond that, it's getting an inspector out to your house to look at it and tell you where your vulnerabilities are. Your vulnerabilities in Connecticut might be completely different than what our vulnerabilities are in Florida, but it could be something as simple as having vents on your garage. So if water got in, it doesn't wash your whole house away. Your doors and windows, what code were they built to when they were built? How is the moisture getting into your house from the roof? How much could that withstand? Is there moisture sources in your house or vulnerabilities? An inspector will tell you that. So you want to find somebody that other people know, but it's a good idea to know what your problems could be if something happened to you. And most people don't want to do that because they're thinking it's not going to happen to them.
They're also fearing the cost.
Yeah, well, there might be some cost there too, but I don't think I know anybody, for one, who has pictures of all their stuff. As I don't think I know anybody offhand who's had to claim like an entire house or a major loss.
And I've heard that one.
But even myself, I never considered that. Like I never thought, how am I going to tell my insurance company what I need and will they believe me? And now that you're saying this is the first time I've thought about it. And that's crazy to me.
Well, first off, why would they believe you?
Yeah.
You know, what do most people do? And you know, maybe I'm dating myself on this, but you know, when your car's broken into and you say, oh, I had all these, we don't use them anymore. But back in my day, there's actually 8-track tapes, but then they had CDs and, or cassettes. Oh, I had all these cassettes that were stolen. I had my gym bag was in there because you want to try to eat up that deductible. I know people that have done that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, insurance companies aren't stupid. They don't like to pay, but I don't think they're stupid. And that you have to prove what you had, whether it's saving receipts for things or certainly having an inventory of it. And that's the easiest thing you could do is go around and take pictures of stuff.
Yeah.
Because there should be a date stamp on it from your camera, a time frame that that picture was taken. And they'll get an idea that you actually had those things. I mean, I'm sure there's always the guy that's going to borrow his friend's stuff just so he can say, hey, nobody's going to do that. Just take your camera and go photograph your stuff. It'll take you literally 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you have that, but also look at your policy. And nobody wants to read that. I mean, it's 60 page plus stuff for a reason. They don't want you to read it. So ask the insurance agent that sold it to you to explain it to you. I've done that. My guy's probably sick of me. I ask him so many questions, but so what? You can always, if somebody, until you tell me to go away, I'm going to keep asking.
What were you going to say, Grizz?
I was saying that's his job.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is his job.
Absolutely. And they're good at it. They'll do a good job telling you what's in it. And if they can't, find somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I shop for insurance, like my car insurance every 6 months, and my house every year or two, because for one, it's always changing. So most of the time I get a better rate. But also, I like a lot of times when I go to re-up, I find that there's a lot of stuff I just don't remember about what I'm actually covered for. So, you know, I don't necessarily go in there asking them to explain it all, but I get a lot of information that you're not going to really think about if you get your insurance when you buy your house and never look at it again for the next 30 years. And most of the time, 30 years later, it's not going to be the same anyway.
No. And they're simple questions. What am I covered for? What perils am I covered for? What's the deductible? Hail damage to your roof might be a completely different coverage than if it was wind or rain.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in Detroit several years ago, a lot of people would flood every year and they didn't pay for the flood insurance. They either couldn't afford it or they just didn't think they would get floods. But they had fire insurance. So every year we had news stories about houses that burned down, and then they found out it was because it flooded and they weren't covered for flood insurance when they investigate. And that's just a double tragedy because now you've committed insurance fraud and you still lost everything. So in Houston a couple years ago, you guys remember Hurricane Harvey and all the rain that fell on Houston?
Yeah, definitely.
All the people that suffered the most damage from that were not in a flood area. So none of them ever thought their house would flood. They could have purchased flood insurance, I think, for $300 or $400 a year.
Yeah.
And that makes the difference between getting whole again or having your life completely turned upside down. And I know for some people, $300 or $400 is a lot of money. You have to think and go, okay, what can I afford? What can I not afford?
Mm-hmm.
But your house is your biggest investment. That's where all your stuff is. For most people, it's their biggest investment. You need to do everything you can to protect it. And if that means coming up with another $300, find a way to do it. Because another thing people do is, okay, you'll pay it 1 year and then you don't have a flood. And you go, we don't need that. It's not going to flood.
Right.
That's when it's going to flood. You know, I can't think of how many times in my life when I've let a warranty lapse. I don't do it anymore because that's when it breaks.
Yeah, I've run into the same thing.
Yeah.
My curiosity, though, is like places like California where they have the wildfires every year. What is their insurance got to be? Like, if your house is burning down year after year after year, A, why are you building it there again? But B, your insurance has got to be through the roof.
It's gotten expensive from what I hear. I don't know who people are using. I grew up out there and I've kind of lost touch with it because they also have earthquakes.
Yeah.
And to me, that's as scary because we have an expert in our film say that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. They're going to have a major earthquake. And when they do, he predicted half the houses in LA and San Francisco would not be inhabitable anymore because they're not built right. When it comes to fire, there are things you can do to improve your chances with fire damage. You know, those vents in your attic that let air in so your roof, the attic isn't a 500 degrees.
Yep.
There's ways you can get those that don't allow sparks to get in, that are sealed.
Yeah, I have.
You know, there's paint you can put on your house that's fireproof. There's a gel you can put on if a fire is coming. There's materials you can build with that are better than just using tinderbox wood to build. And I think one of the things they should definitely do is if your house is destroyed by a disaster, you have to build back to at least withstand that disaster. Yeah. And in Mexico Beach, Florida, where we did most of our hurricane stuff, they didn't even do that there. You know, the winds that destroyed them, it was a Category 5 hurricane, and their standard for rebuilding was only to 140 miles an hour for wind. They raised the wind code from, I think, 130 to 140. So they're not even building back at a standard that would protect them from the storm that wiped them out.
And what's a Category 5? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think it's 160 or 165.
Damn.
And they had a Category 5 there. Your insurance changes if it's declared a Category 5. A lot of people were hoping, they originally called it a 4.
Right.
It took a while, and then they came out and said it was a 5. That's another thing to know in your insurance policy, because they do have a difference in there for it.
So what, they won't cover if it's a 5 or something?
I think you get more coverage for it. I think that's considered another catastrophic level. So people were rooting for it to be called a Category 5. Man, when you're wiped out like they are, you have to hope for something good to happen. And it was one of the most stunning things I've ever seen. I've covered a lot of things. I've been to tornado sites where a house is completely wiped off and all you see is a slab. But when you see an entire area that's just rubble like that, it really is unbelievable. And the look on people's faces when they've experienced that, it's life-changing, and it's so sad. So that's why you want to know as much as you can.
And it seems like these things are growing in frequency. Maybe it's just me, you know, but
I watched a story the other day about climate change, and, you know, that's another political issue, right?
Right.
You know, one side believes in it, the other doesn't. So let's fight over it. And in our film, we're not taking a side on climate change. You can tell me it exists. You can tell me it doesn't. The fact is, storms the last several years have gotten worse, more intense, late in the season, more droughts in the West, stronger hurricanes.
Yep.
So homeowners need to do something. I don't need you to tell me there's climate change or there's not. Just tell me to save my house. That's what I need.
But I mean,
and then you can fight about the rest, because I can't fix climate change right now. If I go out and get an electric car tomorrow, it's not going to change anything.
No.
But if I fix my house, that's the start of changing something.
Yeah, I mean, just look at this year already. That, you know, we're July and it seems like it's insanity as far as weather.
Oh, it's crazy.
You know,
it is. Did you, when you were making the film, did you uncover any kind of like direct information about why people are choosing to rebuild their houses essentially the same as they were before, where they can't withstand the event that destroyed them? Like, why are people doing that?
One of the places we went to is Moore, Oklahoma, where since 1998, I think they had 4 EF4 or EF5 tornadoes. So
that's a big one.
That's the big fella. That's deadly. That's literally wiped out entire neighborhoods in Moore when it's rolled through. But it took 4 of those for them to change the building code. I would have changed it after 1.
Yeah.
4. So people don't change right away. Now they have to put in stronger garage doors, which can make a major difference whether your house blows down or not. They have to put brackets on the walls that attach to the roof a certain way and then attach to the foundation. And so they increased the building code and built better houses. And they've had some tornadoes since then, and they've held up pretty well. Now, a bullseye can hit you. If a major tornado rolls over your house, there might be nothing you can do. And then that's why you need insurance and you need a storm cellar that you got into. Mm-hmm. But it's the houses that are on the fringes as you work your way out from where the center is. Those are the ones that also get destroyed in tornadoes. And now those houses are not in that area. So they also did something similar in Alabama. They've toughened the building codes for tornadoes there too. So the bottom line is, though, there is no, people think they can just rebuild, and you rebuild to what your insurance might cover and what you can afford. That's another thing to look for in your policy. Can I build back to today's standards? What is the replacement value of what I have, not just the coverage of what I have? because that $200,000 40-year-old house might now be a $800,000 concrete house. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
So you want to know that your insurance is not only going to fix your house, it's going to fix it at a standard that will be the code for today. But people do just build back. And in some countries, they don't let them. You know, we had Henk Ovink on, who's the water ambassador from the Netherlands. And over there, they make entire communities move if it's dangerous. And they don't let them live where they were because of the cost if their house is destroyed.
Really?
In this country, we have our individual freedoms. Everybody stomps their feet for it. And sometimes it works against us because, yeah, I have the right to live wherever I want. Then who should pay for it if I pick a bad spot?
That's true.
On that topic, that reminds me of, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even longer now. I was watching a documentary about global warming and climate change and all that, and the rising sea levels. And I want to say it might have been Miami, where they were talking about just on a regular sunny day, the streets will randomly flood, which is not something that happened in the past. And I don't know if they've done anything with it since, but if you're living in an area where there's nothing happening and it's flooding anyway, it might be time to reconsider, you know, how you're doing business down there. But it seems like they just want to make the road taller.
Well, and they have raised houses and they have raised roads because the water there, it's interesting, it's not washing in from the sea, it's coming up from the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Which
it's
is why
happening
we're
in a
seeing
lot of
more
places.
sinkholes, right?
Yeah, that tragedy at Surfside is just, it makes you sick when you see gosh, I mean, in your wildest nightmare, you would not imagine your building collapsing like that.
So
and that, you know, that's just awful.
I mean, on that one, did they rule that that was a sinkhole, or is that more that it was just negligence on the upkeep?
They're not going to come out with that for a while. That's going to be fought for a long time to decide who is at fault there. You know, just the articles that I'm reading, you know, the homeowners association was aware there were problems.
Yeah.
But still, no matter what problem you've ever had anywhere you've lived, you would never think that would happen. I mean, that's World Trade Center type of tragedy.
Yeah.
Where you just would never expect that, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, I can't even imagine what the survivors are going through in their families.
But I mean, that one, from everything we're hearing now, it seems like that it's more of a negligence issue. But on the same line, the sinkholes are happening more and more in Florida for exactly what you're talking about, with the fact that water's coming right up through the ground and it's washing away the soil from underneath houses. Is there anything you can do to stop that?
You get a good engineering study of what you buy. You know, I know there's a lot of sinkholes north of where I live in Tampa, and that would scare the heck out of me.
Oh my God.
You know, when you look at what happened down at Surfside and you think about how they're going to move on from that and assign blame, to me, that just heightens the frustration for individual homeowners in any situation. Because if you're an owner in that building, what do you do when you see those things? Because you have a homeowners association and you can't just go and fix your unit. That wouldn't have done anything. And so that means if you live in a building, now you have to be extra vigilant. Sometimes you have to sue the homeowners association, let the city know there's violations, wave the flag, and get attention for your problem, because now people are going to see, wow, this could happen. Could it happen to me? And maybe that'll change the way things are done. But it's still, I mean,
yeah, hopefully it changes some, I don't know if it's a code, but hopefully it changes some ways that condos run. And maybe everyone I know who's in a condo says it's a pain in the butt to get anything done that's not you doing it directly to your condo. Like if there's something to do with the main drain or sewage line out of your condo that everyone goes into, good luck getting anything done with it. Unless it's affecting everyone, they're not going to touch it.
Yeah, because they have to assess people. And I think I read something that, you know, they were suggesting it was millions of dollars to fix the building, which means everybody in the building would have had to be assessed money. And it does show the challenges to make your place as safe as possible. In the case of a building, it is the community that has to be on top of it and make it as safe as possible, because the individual themselves can't do it.
Now, I'd imagine going forward, you're probably going to see a lot of people in their condo associations down in Florida in particular complaining a lot more, because from the perspective of people living there, this was really random. The building just randomly collapsed. Now, when we look down the road and they're finished their investigation, I'm sure we'll find that it wasn't random. It's been building up. But if you live in a condo in Florida and you have all these deficiencies on record as well, and it's also not getting fixed, who's to say that one's not going to collapse now? So I'm sure going forward, we'll hear a lot more people sounding the whistle on things like that.
Absolutely, and they should, and you should sound the whistle on anything. I want us to get to a point in this country where we reward things that are built really well and stay away from things that are built really poorly. But it does highlight the problem too. Let's say you bought an apartment in that building and you know the building is in really bad shape. That means your place is not worth what you paid for it, probably. And you got to find somebody else to buy it. So there's just, it's going to open so many situations we're going to be hearing about over the coming months and years that hopefully it opens eyes and something positive can come out of it. But you wish those kind of things didn't have to happen to get change.
Agreed.
To get safer things.
But like we said before, we're as a country, we are very reactionary. We are not pro, you know.
Exactly.
But I mean, when you do a condo, do they have to have an inspector go through a condo as well, don't they?
In 2018, it was inspected, is what I read. They did an engineering inspection, and there's a whole report on it.
Yeah.
But like I say, I don't know of many reports that we've heard about as individuals here where it says, if you don't fix this, the entire building is going to fall.
Well,
Right.
yeah, I know they had some strong words. They were warned pretty bad in the 2018 one that they're going to have some structural issues, from what I read.
Still, structural issues to me, because I've been in the construction industry, and if I read structural issues, it's very far from my thought to think, oh, that means the building is going to fully implode.
Yeah.
You know, because that's a pretty extreme case.
Yeah, you think maybe we're going to have to shore up some beams or, replaster the pool or do something. But I don't know that anybody would have said this could happen. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
It's insane. Now that actually, I got thinking on this when I started reading the articles on what was happening there. As you know, I'm sure the housing market is going crazy, really globally right now, but especially in areas of the United States where the work is. And my concern is that I would say like maybe lower middle class type of people who can't really afford a $300,000 or $400,000 house, they're going to be left with options that are really kind of dangerous living situations in order to buy a house and have somewhere to live.
It doesn't have to be that way, though. We talked to Habitat for Humanity in our film, and they build houses that are closer to the $100,000 range than the $300,000 or $400,000 range. And their houses hold up really well in disasters and storms because they have a formula. They use a lot of extra nails. They use thicker plywood. They use the proper bracketing to make it as safe as possible. And they're building houses for people trying to get in the housing market, and they're building them safe houses. So it can be done. There just has to be the will to do it. They're a great example of how you can do it in a positive way. And that's what you hope the building industry would catch up on and just say, let's reward the builder who is building the safe house. Maybe there's certificates you can get to put on them that show, hey, this is an all concrete house. This house can withstand a Category 5 hurricane. And the guy that's throwing up the stick house to just roll over a flip, let's not let that guy own that for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be the person that bails somebody out. Don't buy somebody else's problem. And that's really where we need to go.
Yeah,
now,
that takes a lot of discipline, though.
Oh, it does. And especially as a country, we're really good at bailing out people who really shouldn't be. Yeah.
Well, and the problem here, okay, so the housing market is so hot. If you look at a house, if you don't want it, the next person's going to want it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, that's
and
the other
so,
thing.
Yeah.
Buying your
Walk
first
away.
house, I know for me, there were so many houses I had to talk my wife out of. It's like, nope, we're not doing this. Yeah, you may love it, but I'm looking at the structure of this thing, and I'm not taking care of this. Like, it's not happening. And for a lot of, especially nowadays, people who are buying homes, they don't have the mechanical skills and things of that nature to take care of a house. So they're not even seeing these things, and they're just, yep, that's mine.
Well, the houses you can get sometimes the most inexpensively are really old houses. So they're built to a different code.
Mm-hmm.
And, we saw last year in November, we had hurricane, it was just Tropical Storm Eta took the path through Tampa. That's the most dangerous path. And everybody thought it was just a little storm. there's a lot of houses that were at sea level or 1 or 2 feet up that flooded from that.
Mhm.
You just didn't think it would happen because it was a fast moving late season tropical storm, but it took the right path. So anything can come up and get you, but the older houses are the most vulnerable. And then the new ones that are poorly built, probably right behind that.
Yeah, we see a lot of the poorly built ones up here. I don't know about down there.
No, we have plenty.
Nowadays, it's brutal. You'll step inside of them and the walls move.
Yeah. So Grizz actually just bought his house recently, and I've been in my house for 3 years now, but I'm actually, I've been looking at the housing market really all over the country because I don't want to live in Connecticut anymore. So I've just been kind of looking at all the housing markets, and it's incredible to me, the houses that are on the market in what they're considering sellable condition. And really there's no reason for it outside of greed and people just trying to jump on this bandwagon of the hot housing market right now that you just mentioned. It's insane to me.
Oh, it's crazy down here what they're getting houses for. That my wife and I, when we're walking around, we go, there's no way that house is worth what they are asking for it. And then somebody comes along and pays it, which is just insane.
We're seeing up here people paying over their asking price by ridiculous amounts.
That's been nationwide. But George, have you seen the 3D printed houses in their completion yet?
I have not. Have you?
So I have. I haven't seen them in person, but I've been following it for the last couple of years because 3D printing, they are kind of claiming that it's a much cheaper way of building a house. I don't know anything about the structure and the structural integrity of a 3D printed house because it's essentially concrete. It's just a different way of putting it together. And unfortunately, when I've seen these houses finished, most of them are in California, they're still $600,000. So then that doesn't fix the issue either.
Sure. You have to look at, well, what are your alternatives? $600,000 in California is actually considered an inexpensive house.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on where you are in California. You're right. That could be affordable for a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different issue, California's housing crisis. But they're printing these houses what looks like just on the dirt. I don't know a whole lot about it, but
does it still have rebar in the concrete?
No, it doesn't look like it. So it kind of looks like a big gantry crane, and it just overnight just does its thing, goes around the shape, just layer after layer. It looks like 10 to 12 inch layers at a time. I don't even know, what the strength is, what's the tensile strength or the PSI of this concrete.
Yeah, it all depends on the mix, I believe.
Yeah. But for them to be building the house that fast, I don't know if I can trust that yet.
Yeah, that would make me a little nervous. I think if somebody comes along with concrete panels or some kind of system that they could show can build inexpensive houses that are safe, I think that person would rule the marketplace. I mean, that's what I would love to go to Zillow or Realtor.com, and the houses that they put up there in the top are the safe houses, not necessarily the pretty houses.
Mm-hmm.
But that just is a whole educational thing where people have to go, okay, I've had enough. I'm not going to be wiped out by this. I'm not going to buy somebody else's crap. If you're not building it good, we're not going to buy it. And that the market talks. If some guy builds a house and nobody buys it, that's the start, right? Yeah. That's the start of where people are saying that. Unfortunately, right now, though, the market's so scarce that almost anything is selling. Mm-hmm. And most of them are selling way more than what they're worth.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm curious to where this is going to go in the next few years. They're actually saying that today I read an article that they had the least amount of applicants for a home loan since before COVID started. So it's lower than it has been since the beginning of 2020. Which is this the start of what we're seeing, where it's starting to come down again? Or is it just everyone's bought up a house? Or is it because nothing's being built because wood's too damn expensive? I mean,
well, that's I've heard that's coming back down slowly, but
yeah, it's still
insane.
Wicked high.
I know some people who were building a house around here. I read about this online, and the builder came back to them and said, "You need to pay us like $40,000 more because the cost of the wood went up."
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bad, and I think that would have been a great opportunity for concrete to swoop in and say, "Use us. It's much better." Because I don't know why anywhere where there's a hurricane, why they would be building a wood house.
God, no. You'd think they wouldn't be able to. You
They
know?
do. They
Yeah.
do. And a lot of the houses around here have wood on the second floor. So they pick the area, okay, we'll put concrete down at the bottom, but when we get up higher where the wind will be stronger, oh, we can use wood there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Good idea.
So, through the process of making the film, did you discover, what kind of mistakes people are making in terms of where they choose to live?
Yeah, I mean, people were getting closer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the storm surge and hurricanes can be the most powerful. We're living out in the woods. Look at Paradise, California from 2018. That was just a monumental tragedy of all these people that had their living in a place literally for them that was paradise.
Mhm.
And when that fire came through there was only two ways out of town. There was no way to get to everybody and put the fire out. Lives were lost. It's just a horrible story of what happened there. And so anywhere you live has a risk. Some are greater than others. And you need to think about how you can handle that risk when you live there. But most people moving into the woods are thinking they're going to be in the woods.
Yeah.
And that's all they're thinking about. They're not thinking about how the house is going to hold up in a fire.
But there are things we can do about wildfires nowadays. I mean, you think we're getting into the drought season. We're actually already there, even though we weren't supposed to be yet. And you'd think we'd already be implementing these things to aid with, or stop the spreading of wildfires.
I saw a story the other day about how low the water level was in the Hoover Dam.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that if it goes down, I think it was another 175 feet, they're going to have to start cutting power to a lot of places in California. And they've had record drought out there. Yeah. And it's going to get worse. There's going to be a lot of fires this year. You watch the news and you think, well, everything's already burned down. But when a fire happens a year later, there's a lot of undergrowth that gets put back, that starts growing. And pretty soon you have more stuff that can burn. There's a lot of land left this could be a really bad summer for fires.
Yeah, they were supposed to get 12 inches of water in the spring, and they didn't even get close to that, which to me, it's like, wait a minute, 12 inches of water isn't that much, and you didn't even touch that? Like, it's going to be bad. It's going to be a bad summer.
Yeah, it's going to be. And, it's interesting, and because Elsa just moved through here, the last few weeks, it's been really rainy here. I mean, we have a pool that when you get a couple inches of rain, we have to drain water out to get it down halfway on the tile. I didn't even have to drain it from this hurricane, which means that we almost got no rain from that. But that same storm could flood you. It could flood Charleston. Yep. It could flood North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
As it picks up moisture from other sources, as it moves up the coast. So you just never know where you're going to get it. And then you look to the west where they would kill to have any rain. Yep. They're not getting anything. And it's going to be bad this year.
And we've been really bad. We've had tons of rain this year, which is very abnormal for us.
Yeah, well, all the weather, as we've mentioned, is getting more extreme. But Grizz, I wanted to point something out to you about the wildfires, especially in California. Whether they just had a fire last year or not, a lot of their big issues, especially in Paradise, because I was actually speaking to someone on that earlier today, their issues are the structures, the way that they're built, because the buildings are older. Someone I know whose uncle lived in Paradise during the fire, they got the warning about 20 minutes before they left their house that, they had to evacuate. They didn't have a choice. And his house was fine. So he basically moved as fast as he could and just long enough to grab a couple of essential things and get in his truck and leave. Yeah. And he could see his house completely engulfed in flames in his rear view by the time he left. Really? That's how fast their houses were catching on fire.
But, like if this is a yearly thing, like you can do fire berms and things like that, it helps slow things, right? Especially when it comes to fires. Why are we, maybe they are doing it and I just don't know because we live in an area where wildfires aren't an issue.
Even that got political with, is it the federal government's responsibility for that? Is the governor of California who's responsible for thinning out what lands, whether it's federal or state-owned property? And in the case of Paradise, in any place, even in Malibu, if you were told you had 20 minutes to get out of your house and you hadn't planned for that in advance, you might spend the first 15 minutes going, what do I do? You would just be paralyzed. Yeah. And so what this woman in Malibu suggested to us is that everybody have a box that they keep in a closet with a list in it called a go box. And if you have to evacuate, you look on that list and it says driver's licenses, birth certificates, family albums, and you have a list of things you want to grab and throw in that box and get out of the house.
Yeah.
And anybody in a fire area should be doing that. Anybody anywhere, if you think you might ever have to evacuate, because that's another huge thing you can do to save things that you'll never be able to find again. And then things that will be so debilitating to you if you just lost them short term. Like if you have to get a new ID, if you have to get new credit cards, if your wedding ring, a watch that was handed down from your great grandfather. Those are things that if you have them on a list in a box and you were told you had 20 minutes, you could have a very productive 20 minutes as opposed to just being paralyzed by fear of what's going to happen.
Right. And this person actually, they got really negligible items. It was just the most basic things they could think of at the time because of their lack of preparation, and they lost absolutely everything. They were older, and I don't know what transpired with their insurance or anything like that, but they now live traveling in their RV, so it didn't affect them too badly, but they did lose everything. That included family pictures and everything you could think of in the house, just from lack of preparation and a house that wasn't updated.
Well, I've had comments like when some of the people from Malibu whose house is completely burned down, and people have said to me, well, they were rich. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your means are. When you have family heirlooms and things that you've collected over your lifetime, that's your treasure. That matters to you. And if it's gone and you can't replace it, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Yeah. That's not going to replace your great grandfather's diary or the baby shoes for your child. Nothing gets those things back. So everybody's tragedy is individual to them. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Losing everything is losing everything. Now, they may have a quicker path to recovery if they have savings or they have ways they can tap into it, but they still lost everything that they had.
Yeah.
And it's still tragic. And that's why you hope people can do something about it.
I mean, so here's the thing going forward, other than preparation, what else do we have that we can change, like you're saying?
It starts with preparation. It starts with doing your part. If everybody did something themselves, we would be accomplishing something. But there's a lot of people that won't. It's like we talked about in the very beginning. There's a lot of people in my neighborhood that don't have generators, that probably live in a house that could flood, that didn't. And they're probably today going, no big deal.
Yeah.
Wow, they really oversold that. It was nothing. And the fact is, no, they did their job telling us what could happen. We got lucky because it didn't happen. Now, what are we going to do in case it happens again? And if you think anything different than that, you're going to have trouble eventually.
Now, the average homeowner, I find, people that don't have a background in construction or anything, where can they go to figure out what it is they need to do? Because most people that I speak to don't even know where the main shutoff for the water in their house is.
God, no.
Well, there's on our website, thelasthousestanding.org, there's a resource page, and it takes you to FEMA. It takes you to some other websites where you can go and learn about some of these things. And they have different headings on all those different web pages about, flooding, fire, earthquakes, just steps you can take to start. Also talk to your neighbors, find out who a good inspector is in the area that people like. I never like to just Google and take somebody. I want to know somebody who knows somebody, because
word of mouth.
That's an important thing of who does that. And they can half-ass it or they can be really good at it. And find out what the vulnerabilities are in your specific property. But it starts with doing something. And that's the first, it sounds ridiculous, but it's the first step, right? It's okay, what am I going to do to make a difference? After people hear this podcast, just look at your insurance policy and do the photographs of your stuff.
Yeah.
So at least if the tragedy happens, you'll be that much ahead of the game. And then work from there. Get an inspector in and find out if there's something incredibly simple that could be fixed. Maybe it's really expensive. Maybe you're going to have to sell that house and move, or you make sure it's insured enough and you're buying years of time until that disaster could happen, but at least you're aware of it as opposed to getting surprised by it.
Those are fantastic tips because, like I said, most people that I talk to, as I mentioned, they don't even know how to shut their water off. So I know they're definitely not prepared to deal with an actual issue.
And an inspector will show you that. They'll show you where the shutoff is. You should know, call the gas company. Ask them how you shut off the gas that's going into your house in case you had to do it. They come out to read your meter once a month, unless you're in an area where now it's all automated. but I bet you get somebody out there eventually that would show you, or an inspector will tell you, this is the main gas line into your house. Here's how you turn this valve off if you had to. One of the things I learned, and they remind you every year, but I had forgotten about it, is when people get generators, they say that more people in Florida die from a generator that's not vented properly than die from the actual storm.
Right.
And
Like
that's
the
because the
exhaust
generators, the fumes from it, it's too close to the house.
Yep.
It's by a window. Some people put it in their garage, and that needs to be out. I saw a story on the news last night that said it needs to be 20 feet away from your house. I can't tell you if that's right or wrong, but I can tell you got to be careful about that.
Oh yeah.
So just going out and buying a generator is not the answer if you don't know how to use it right.
So along the lines that you're talking about, I have a buddy who, good guy, smart guy, but he's not hands-on. He ended up selling his house because there were so many things wrong with his house that he didn't want to pay for to get taken care of, which blew my mind that that's why you were getting rid of your house. But a lot of people do that nowadays because they don't know how to do those things that people knew how to do 30, 40 years ago. So
you know the worst part of that story? Somebody bought it.
And exactly. So someone bought it, and I guarantee you the inspector didn't find everything because the guy can only catch so much. You know, especially when it comes to a house sale. If you're bringing them in not for a house sale, I'm sure their mindset's going to change a little bit, and they're going to look for bigger things. But still, like, that's out there, and it just blew my mind. I was like, what?
Yeah, and some people don't want to get a report. Interestingly, and I think you want to maybe ask a realtor about this. Like, if I go out and have my house inspected and that report exists, do I have to disclose that to somebody buying my house? Because if you're trying to get rid of a piece of garbage house and you have this 50-page report of all the garbage in the house, do you have to give that to the person buying it, or can they sue you if you don't? So there may be a downside to having that inspection. Obviously, if you're not planning on moving, to me, the upside is far greater. It's making it safe for you and your family and your investment. But you have to be prepared to do the work, right? If they tell you that this house is it's ready to fall down,
yeah,
you know, maybe you don't want to know that, but I would rather know that. I would rather be safe than not have had that done.
Well, not to mention, say it does have issues. Well, the money you put, there's not many things that are a better investment than your own house. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to put the money into your house, it comes back in the end.
Right. I think, but people are afraid of finding out, okay, I do live on over a sinkhole.
Or wait, this is worth nothing right now.
Yeah, this house is worthless. The water is rising and it's going to be a lake in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody wants that news. So there's no perfect answer to everything. You can't give one answer that everybody will fit into. You know, it's not a 42 long suit that everybody's going to fit into. Yeah. It's there's going to be different sizes and things. But that's why you want to do everything to increase your chances. And there, you know, we've given you a good list of it. We have on our website also a list of things you should ask your realtor or the person you're buying a house from or the builder. Must ask questions. Ask them these questions. And if you don't like the answers, don't buy their house. You know, if the builder says, I don't know. Or, you know, I like to ask them, what disasters did you have in mind when you built this and how will it survive them?
Oof, God,
they might ask me to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many of them I'm not even going to ask how many of them actually could answer that question? You know what I mean? That's a minority right there, because most of them are going to tell you what.
Yeah, we need to do a hidden camera video with that. And, except I don't want to get sued. I would love to know the answer to that. You know, I'm always frustrated by the builder buyer experience, because the house is so personal to you. And I've been on job sites where the crew's throwing garbage into the walls before they put the drywall up, or they're going to the bathroom on the lot, or they don't scrape it clean, so there's broken glass from the house that was there before and all this stuff. You know, it's never going to be as personal to anybody but you. It's your house. Mm-hmm. So if you're building a house, show up on the job site a lot and watch them. And if you're buying a house that exists, just inspect the heck out of it. Get the inspector that they don't want you to get.
Oh, yeah.
That they hate.
Well, I think that that's a perfect place to end it, so people can really think about the really solid advice here on how to make better decisions, because they've been doing a terrible job so far. So, George, where can people watch The Last House Standing?
Well, if you go to our website, thelasthousestanding.org, we list public television stations around the country where the film's rolling out. It's this month it's on in Tampa and in Las Vegas. But, you know, if you live in Connecticut, if you live anywhere that's not those two cities right now, you can rent it on our website. It's available to watch right there for $3.99. And, you know, I'm not going to get rich off of $3.99, but it could change your life. It's more important that people see it and do something. Watch the film, take action. You know, you guys are younger than me. I always joke about this with my kids. It's the young generation that has access to all this stuff that they can research things and get answers instantly. But my kids will still say to me, they'll ask me the question and I'll say, gosh, I wish there was a device where you could look that up. Well, there's a film here that you can learn about what you need to do. And there's a website that has a lot of information. Do the work. It'll pay off for you.
Absolutely.
Well, George, I will direct everybody when we post this episode to your website and your video. And we really appreciate you coming on the show. And it was a fantastic and very informative episode. A lot of things I didn't even know about.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Good luck with Elsa. I hope it is as easy for you as it was for us, but you just never know. So hang in there. I hope for the best for you guys.
Thanks. It's been great.
Well, listeners, I hope you got a lot out of that because, as I said in the intro here, I didn't even think of half the shit that George told us about. And he knows what he's talking about. So definitely take some notes and go do the things that we discussed because, as it turns out, they matter. Go check your stuff. Take pictures because the insurance company doesn't believe you.
Yeah, the pictures thing was a good one. I mean, I've heard that before and just still was clueless and didn't do it because I'm an idiot and a monkey.
I've never heard that. Never.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. So, Grizz, tell them all about the things.
Just the things. Thank you again for listening to Beautiful Bastards Podcast. Please take a few minutes to give us a rating on iTunes. It's a major part of what keeps this hurricane a-blowing. It helps us keep the lights on so we can bring you new content. Remember, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, our website, and anywhere else you stream your content from. If you enjoy the show, you can find all our links at linktree/beautifulbastards. Or you can check out our website, beautifulbastardspodcast.com. And now YouTube. Smash the like button and subscribe. Shouldn't you be monitoring the weather or something?
We can't stop natural disasters, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge.
Man, you are a bitch.
That's perfect for this
I'm
one.
still going to leave in you're a bitch.